Do you want me to put it back on the module?
Thank you very much indeed, Nicky. Let's get on then for round 4 of the 2026 ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. It's time for a double-header in Jeddah and for qualifying to get underway here at the Corniche circuit. And what a circuit it is. 3 kilometres long, 19 turns in total, and a proper challenge for the drivers. Maximilian Günther took pole position and a victory in race 1 here last year. He's been on good form so far this weekend. Down into turn 1, you can see, into turn 4, a proper overtaking zone, but that's where Max Günther's weekend came undone after victory on the Friday. The Saturday he ended up crashing into the side of Antonio Felix da Costa. Through the bus stop chicane before we come in towards the final part of the lap. Turn 13, this is where attack mode will be activated for the drivers, and then just 2 chicanes to complete the lap. 15, an overtaking zone into there. However, that's where Oliver Rowland glanced into the wall in FP2 earlier on this morning. Well, the sun is now beginning to set here in Jeddah, and very much looking forward to qualifying getting underway. Karun, of course, we saw the Porsche powertrains 1, 2 and 3 in FP2 earlier on this afternoon. However, do you think they've got a chance of pole position here today, or do you think that was a bit of a red herring, as it were, given the conditions?
No, I think they've absolutely got a chance, but I think the challenge is there's probably 10 drivers who are in with a chance, and that is the challenge for the drivers, but also the joy for us when it comes to a Formula E qualifying. You know, you got this guy here, Nick Cassidy, leader of the championship by just 2 points. He'll be right in the fight. You know, you expect in this group as well. You know, people like Nick de Vries have shown pace. Norman Nato has shown pace at different points over the weekend as well.
Certainly has. Well, Group A qualifying then about to get underway. So this is the odd number drivers in the championship. So Cassidy, Dennis, Muller, Mortara, Buemi, de Vries, Pepe Marti, Jean-Eric Verne, Norman Nato and Lucas de Grassi all out in this one. A point on Lucas de Grassi. He's got a 3-place grid penalty for not following the race director's instructions in free practice 1 yesterday afternoon. Essentially, that's because he didn't come to a stop after he went off of the circuit down at the bus stop chicane. There we go, 3-place grid penalty for the Brazilian driver. But the green light is on at the end of the pit lane then. Group A qualifying gets underway as the sun lists lazily in the sky. This man here, Oliver Rowland, he'll be out in Group B in about 10 minutes or so's time. And the team, I'm sure, working frantically to get that car repaired following his biff into the barrier in FP2 earlier on this afternoon, DC.
Yeah, you can see the frustration on his face there. He sort of called it that silly mistake. I think he was a bit unfortunate, really, that conveyor belt that goes around the Plastic Tech Pro barriers. He just caught it with a bit too much of the open face of the tyre, and it gripped up in the heat of the day, because, of course, yesterday, when they had free practice, it was under the darkness and just a little bit cooler. But the benefit of being out in the second group, he will be out on track, and he's got the benefit now of watching the action. Having experienced the track firsthand at the hands of Karun, I now feel very much dialed into this short, exciting racetrack.
It was slightly concerning when we were coming down to this hairpin on your first lap driving, David, that I had to shout, "It's a hairpin, DC, slow down!"
Yeah, you would think I would have, but the thing is, when you look at it from here, it looks like it's very open, doesn't it? But when you're actually out on track, it's a bit different.
Yeah, I think that, you know, Tom, as much as I know you were saying that the sun is dropping, at this point when you're out there, it is still baking. It definitely feels warmer today than it did yesterday when we had FP1 as well. So, you know, And the reason I'm mentioning is, you look at these drivers now weaving around, building temperature into the tyres. Yesterday we saw them doing threes, and three sort of build-ups, and then pushing for the fast lap on their fourth one. I think that might happen a lap, maybe 2 laps earlier here.
Yeah, and tyre temperature is going to be pretty critical. I mean, it was the talk of the town when we were in Miami a fortnight ago, but especially here in Jeddah, as Karun said, quite rightly, very hot. It's actually a little bit cooler than it was for FP2 earlier on this afternoon, but still very, very hot, and the track temperature is still quite warm. And as you can see, drivers are going around, they're building temperature into the surface of the tyre and trying to get that sort of core temperature up at the moment. But what we have seen in the group stage of qualifying so far this season are drivers doing just one flying, sort of like a few build laps really, rather to sort of get those temperatures up. But I wonder whether we might see fewer of those build laps here, just given the fact that the ambient temperature is that much higher.
Yeah, 100%. You know, they only do the laps because they're trying to prep the tyres, and if they don't need to prep the tyres in the same way, then it's all about just getting on with it.
What I
got alert 69. Can I acknowledge?
Yes, acknowledge. Manage your top speed and tire pressures. Top speed and tire pressures to manage before turn 13 and turn 1.
No, of all the alerts you're going to get, that's probably not the worst ones.
Yeah, certainly worse out there for Jean-Eric Vergne. Let's see what he can do. In terms of his qualifying positions so far this year, not been particularly that much to write home about. 8th in Sao Paulo, and then 2 18th places in both Mexico and Miami. And qualifying, we think, is actually going to be quite important here relative to some other rounds. It's not going to be a peloton-style race, especially given the pit boost action that we've got coming on later on this afternoon. Speaking to James earlier in FP2, he reckons sort of top 10, that's kind of the lowest point you really want to be.
Starting second builds. Can look after the rears,
So this is curious, right? That's what I was about to say before. They're sort of going in these packs of 2 by 2. And I don't really understand why, because there's a half of the track. We've got a track map up here in the commentary box. Half the track is empty. And when you've only got 10 cars on track, there should be no reason for traffic to be an issue. There's ample space across 3 kilometers to spread the 10 cars apart here. And I do find it odd. We have got, for example, we've got Nick de Vries running right next to Jake Dennis. We saw on the screen there earlier. Pepe Marti's got De Grassi right behind him, and they're right behind Byrne. But anyway, all that for later. Nico Muller, he's got plenty of space in front of him, and this is his first push lap, I think, Tom.
Yeah. It's a couple of seconds away from what they were doing earlier, but he's getting into the window.
He's backed out of it, turn 1. So he's obviously had a go, I think, down into turn 1. Felt on the first braking zone, the first turn in, not quite there, not quite happy enough with the tyres, and has backed right out of it. So Jake Dennis, let's see what he does.
Yeah, we reckon Dennis is going to be going for a lap here. I mean, 5 minutes left, so we're already halfway through the session at this point. Let's see what Dennis can do in terms of setting a representative time for the rest of the drivers to sort of follow, really.
Yeah, it's surprising that they've taken so much of the session to get themselves into a window, but I guess cooler conditions, warmer conditions, there's balance. Balance is king.
Yeah.
You've got to have the front and rear talking to the driver. And we heard earlier that radio message saying, cool the rears. So it would suggest that they're struggling to get, unsurprisingly, the heat in the front tyre relative to the rear.
Yeah, group stages of qualifying, just to remind you, 300 kilowatts rear-wheel drive. When we go into the dual stages later on, we go up to 4-wheel drive and an extra 50 kilowatts of power. Very close to the wall in the middle part of the bus stop there for Jake Dennis.
God, I'd taken my glasses off there just beforehand. I thought he was driving through the wall, put them back on again. But full commitment, really impressive.
Yeah, not hanging about. In towards turn 13, couple of bites at the cherry just to get the nose of the car in. This is where we've seen so many drivers getting impeded coming through into these final couple of chicanes. The right-hander here is where we saw Oliver Rowland in the wall in FP2. No such bother for Jake Dennis.
Looked like he went over the front axle a little bit there on the way into the corner, which means he's got a bit of understeer when he's trying to carry the speed in, which put him slightly out of position for the exit of that second last chicane.
Let's see what the time is going to be then for Jake Dennis. He'll go up second quickest. Nato, his former teammate, has just popped it into the top spot. So 1:17.5 is Norman Nato's time, 1:17.7 there for Jake Dennis. Some super slow-mos of the car just bouncing through the bus stop chicane here. This is through the first part of it, so that's through turns 8 and 9.
Beautifully accurate in terms of positioning relative to the curve.
Absolutely. What about Eduardo Mortara? Quick in FP2 this morning. Top 5 for him in that Mahindra. Fastest overall in the first sector for the Swiss driver. 1 podium so far for him in season 12. Can he add to that tally here this weekend? Well, a good qualifying position will help him out. No bother at all. Personal best in sector 2. Just continues the momentum that he's built on this lap.
Ah, it's got no grip, man. The rear is all over the shop.
Dennis clearly unhappy with the balance of the car. What about Eduardo Mortara and Nico Müller? Another driver who's got a podium this year, Nico Müller. Second for him last time out in Miami. Mortara's about to come across the line. At the moment he's through, but he's not set a representative time in this session. He goes up to second quickest, just 11 thousandths of a second behind Norman Nato.
Yeah, good lap coming up here from Müller as well. His first 2 sectors looking strong. We saw a clean run through the final chicane, and he's gone third fastest. But look at the times, Tom. Just 82 thousandths of a second between the top 3. De Vries a little bit off his teammate. In fact, 4 tenths off his teammate, so he's down in 5th.
Yeah, a bit of time left there on the table for Nick De Vries. And we'll see whether he's going to be able to do that. 2 minutes left on the session. Nico Müller's just under investigation for track limits down at turn 17. So that's right towards the end of the lap. We'll keep an eye out and see whether there's any discretions from that. Drivers have been using the sort of blue painted part of the tarmac to try and maximise the radius of the corner. Nick Cassidy goes up to 6th quickest. That's not quite where he needed to be in the Citroën. And after a dog's day at the office last time out in Miami, he really does need a good weekend here to turn his fortunes around.
I love having dogs in the office, so I'm going to protest against that phrase every time you say it. But yeah, Cassidy, he's what, 2 tenths off Jean-Eric Vergne, his teammate in the other Citroën. So yeah, that's not great. And the other, I mean, it's a funny one, isn't it? Because in Mexico, obviously, he looked really quick, and you know, both the short runs and when it came to the race, especially. Although actually, no, having said that, when it came to qualifying in Mexico, though, he was further back, wasn't he? He was outside the top 10 on the grid.
He was. This is that's the Nick Cassidy strategy, though. It doesn't seem to matter where he starts, even if he's outside of the top 10, that he can cycle his way through. The difference being, of course, they were more what we call traditional Formula E races, in that there was no pit boost. Now that's coming into play. It does make that job a little bit more tricky.
Reference is okay.
Yeah, but the 17.5 reference for P1.
Yeah, but I mentioned about the margin. I can't pass, and I'm limited on lap time in front of me. Look in front of me, man.
So
Cassidy then unhappy about where he's at in terms of track position, isn't he?
Yeah, he's at the back of the train. That's what's happened. He's in a train of 4 cars behind Marty, Di Grassi, and Jean-Eric Vergne, and he's the 4th of that train. Behind him, though, and this is what maybe the conversation carried on. Behind him, he's got like a 25-second gap, which he could drop back into.
He's going to run out of time to get another lap.
Yeah, this will be his final flyer. He's just coming across the timing line. We can see it on our driver tracker here in the commentary box. So this is the final lap then for Eduardo Mortara in particular as well. He's second quickest at the moment. Checkered flag is now out at the end of Group A. Top 4 drivers to remind you going through at the moment. It's Nato, Mortara, Müller and Jean-Eric Vergne. Will we see any more improvements coming through from those, especially outside of those top 4 places?
This is Mortara coming up. Oh, a little bit of obviously on the way out, but a good lap to go fastest of anybody there. So that's a strong lap from Edo Mortara. Clearly the tyres starting to come alive. Nato's on an improvement as well, Tom.
Yeah, Nato looking pretty good here. Can he bump Mortara down a position? Let's have a look. Goes second quickest, stays second quickest then. His teammate Nick De Vries. De Vries has aborted the lap, I think, on the final flyer. He's just gone over. So De Vries will not make it through at the end of Group A qualifying. Nico Müller in 3rd fastest manages to better his time, doesn't improve in position, but some more personal best sectors coming in.
Yeah, you could say Jake Dennis. This is an important lap for Jake Dennis because he's 5th at the moment and he stays 5th. Yeah, so Dennis is out.
He loses time. What about Pepe Marti? Got his run compromised at the end of free practice 2. Improves in position, but it's only P8. He does not progress forwards, as well as Sebastian Buemi, who ends the session slowest of the lot. The man who was on pole position in Mexico City is out of qualifying and slowest of the pile in Group A.
And Cassidy's aborted. Cassidy's done the first 2 sectors and aborted. So the championship leader is out in 7th place. His teammate has snuck in, Jean-Eric Vergne, in 4th. But it's Edo Mortara in the Mahindra who's gone fastest.
Yeah, by a tenth of a second as well. That's a fairly large margin in Formula E terms. And let's have a listen to some team radio.
Hold on.
Fantastic. Good job, guys.
Yeah, nice one there from Eduardo Mortara through into the dual stages of qualifying for the Mahindra team, along with Norman Nato, Nico Müller and Jean-Eric Verne. So Fred Bertrand, team principal for the Mahindra outfit. A bit of yin and yang, I imagine, going on in his head at the moment, in the sense that one driver's made it through, Eduardo Mortara, but De Vries having to abort that final lap at the end of Group A, meaning that the Dutchman, the former world champion no less, does not go through into the duels for round 4 here.
Yeah, that is that'd be a bit of disappointment, wouldn't it? Because 4 tenths is a big gap.
So you are quickest in all the sectors on your ultimate, so great job.
Great job to you.
Compliments all round, unsurprisingly. Everybody loves a winner, although it's only of this particular session. We'll see how the rest of it goes, but it's a confidence game, isn't it? If you've got the car talking to you, especially when you've got these big stops into curb hopping chicanes, then you're using both axles in different ways all the time around the lap. So there's not really a fast section here, is there?
Felipe. Matt, I just have the rear. I'm driving a shopping trolley. Like the rears are just disconnected to the front. Like I have like minus 10% grip on the rear axle. Like no traction, no braking performance. Combined grip is 0.
On the positive side, you can spot me on a dark night because look how bright my car is.
Yeah, it doesn't make it through, does Jake Dennis, 5th fastest for the British driver. I mean, considering the fact that he was P2 in FP2 earlier on this afternoon, that's a big disappointment for the Season 9 World Champion. You can see that on the body language as he jumps out of the car, keeps his crash helmet on at this point. That's the universal sign that a driver does not wish to be spoken to. Likewise, Nick Cassidy, I can't imagine he's going to be particularly pleased with that result either. Here is the classification of Group A then. Eduardo Mortara, Norman Nato, Jean-Eric Verne and Nico Müller are the 4 drivers that make it into the dual stages from Group A. We say goodbye to Jake Dennis, Nick De Vries, Nick Cassidy, championship leader, Pepe Marti, Lucas de Grassi, as well as former pole sitter from season 12 in Mexico, Sebastian Buemi. He was slowest of the lot. Group B qualifying, of course, coming up in a few moments' time, and I imagine for some of the drivers that saw their teammates out in Group A, they'll be taking a few lessons forward and into that session coming along the way in a couple of moments' time. So the sunshine still in the sky here in Jeddah. Group B qualifying not too far away. Let's have a look at how it all lines up for Group B. So we'll see Pascal Wehrlein out with Oliver Rowland, Mitch Evans, Joel Eriksson, Taylor Barnard and Maximilian Gunther, the 2 DS Penske drivers, with Antonio Felix da Costa, Zane Maloney, Felipe Drugovich, and the quickest man from this morning, Dan Ticktum in the Cupra Kiro. Green light is on at the end of pit lane, then Group B qualifying gets underway here in Jeddah as the 10 cars and drivers filter out onto the circuit. What we saw in Group A a couple of moments ago there, Karun, were drivers going out and doing one run, as we've seen throughout the majority of the season, but crucially the lap times were coming right at the end of that one. We didn't see that in Miami a fortnight ago.
Yeah, despite the temperatures, the tyres were hanging on. I think most drivers improved on that final lap. We saw Cassidy aboard. I see there's an investigation between Jake Dennis and Nick De Vries, so we'll see how that plays out for impeding. So that might explain what happened to De Vries, because the gap between him and Mortara of 4 tenths is a bit unusual. Those two have generally been very, very evenly matched.
Yeah, absolutely. Drivers now out onto the circuit then here in Jeddah. So the 2 Jaguars of Mitch Evans and Antonio Felix da Costa are out as well as the 2 DS Penske's. I wonder if they might try and work together in this session. We've seen situations like that in the past in Formula E, and given the fact that both cars are out, it seems like a missed opportunity to not do so. Good to see also that Oliver Rowland is back out in this session after he biffed it into the barrier in FP2. Of course, he lost the last, 18 minutes left of the session once the red flag came out. So a crucial amount of run time lost, and also time lost in terms of running in 350 kilowatts. So I wonder how that's going to affect him here in this session. Of course, in the group stages, we've got 300 kilowatts and rear-wheel drive. But again, it might put him on the back foot, just that little bit less data relative to the other drivers who were able to go the full length of that session. So weaving on the start-finish straight to get heat into the tyres and the brakes. Pascal Wehrlein leading the train, followed by Oliver Rowland. Then you do have the two Jaguars, Antonio Felix da Costa just in front of teammate Mitch Evans as they come down in towards turn one. It's interesting how congested the circuit ends up being, despite the fact that it is actually, you know, a relatively spacious sort of circuit.
And I think it comes back to the time, isn't it? Because the engineers... So the engineers are a sort of homogenous group of people, aren't they? They all think in the same way. So what happens is they all kind of arrive at the same conclusions in terms of what's the best run plan, and then they release the cars at the same time to try and achieve that, so you know you don't miss the last lap. But of course what happens then is you send them out in packs, and then you end up with these sort of traffic and impeding issues, and Nick Cassidy, for example, ranting on the radio. So sometimes you almost wonder, just by doing something a bit differently and having a bigger gap instead of this mess we're looking at, you know, in terms of pure numbers, it might not be optimal, but it might give you a better result.
Yeah, you could argue right at the very beginning of the session when they're building everything up, warming the tyres, it's not that important because they're certainly well off the pace at this stage. But I certainly would want clear vision ahead of me. I don't want to see anyone on my racetrack. I want to feel like I'm owning the circuit, and you know, especially with street tracks, which is the majority of what we have here in Formula E. I wanted to be first out in somewhere like Monte Carlo or Singapore, so you just saw your track and didn't get distracted by any other cars. But what this group has an advantage, of course, over the first group is how was the warm-up? You know, how long did it take for them to get the tyres in the window? The tyres seem to hold on right to the very last lap. So the teams obviously get that information from their other competitors, and well, they can deploy it in this session.
Well, Google Gemini reckons that we're going to see 2 build laps, 1 push lap and then a cool down lap. You can see Wehrlein very much on a push lap here at the moment, so he's gone a little bit earlier than we saw in Group A a few minutes ago. If you remember, it was about 5 minutes or so until we saw lap times coming in at the end of Group A, and here you can see the 6 minutes left of the session. Wehrlein already on a fast one and with a nice bit of clear track in front of him. Nobody else to bother him around as he negotiates this penultimate chicane here.
Yeah, I mean, you know, just looking at the positioning on track, right? If I look at, this is Wehrlein, he's got clear space in front of him, he can do all the things that David was talking about, build up in his own time, he'll come across the line, and he's popped up a 17.5. The gap between him and the last car on the train, Maloney, is nearly a minute. You know, and that's the point. You know, when they were being released in the pits, you could wait 30-40 seconds, and then you could build up in your own time, and you could still kind of build it in a way that works, I think, and be slightly out of sync.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see what the drivers are able to do. Barnard's just gone into third quickest. Ericsson also improving, as well as these sort of representative lap times coming in at the halfway stage of this session. Keep an eye out for the 2 DS Penske drivers as well, Taylor Barnard and Max Günther. Günther was in front of his teammate Barnard this morning, but Günther was actually quickest in FP1 yesterday, and Barnard looked pretty handy. If you remember, last year here, he became the youngest ever pole sitter in Formula E.
He's aborted here, Oliver Rowland.
Yeah, it's interesting, Wehrlein has set a representative lap, a whole lap ahead of everyone else. They're all still in their build lap, so he's obviously felt the car and had the belief that he could go and exploit the tyres early on.
A new race engineer for this year for Pascal Wehrlein. Robert Sattler now on the engineer side of the garage for the Season 10 World Champion, and it seems to be a combination that has taken a little bit of time to find its feet, but now starting to reap the rewards for Wehrlein. He was the hot favourite of the championship going into this season, and well, we're yet to see the sort of top step of the podium for Pascal Wehrlein, but the results you can imagine are not going to be far away, especially if he's able to help command in qualifying, and given the Porsche powertrain's pace that we've seen so far here today, it would be hard to bet against that.
Felipe Drugovich has done a time of 17.9, so he's the only other one so far that has got a proper representative time on the board, and you know, unsurprisingly, 2 Porsche powertrains. running in a slightly, you know, different program, but clearly communication going on there in terms of maybe you don't need as much time to build it up. We'll see. Well, the proof will be in the pudding, won't it, when other people start doing the times, whether they're still at the top.
Yeah, well, on board here with Wehrlein, he's gone quickest of all in that first sector. It just feels like he's a lap ahead of everyone else in terms of getting his eye in and pushing on the tyres.
Well, the benefit for that obviously is that, one, of course, he's getting the lap times in early. However, if there is a yellow flag later on in the session, a red flag, someone ends up clipping the wall or whatever may end up happening, then he's obviously got that bank of lap time and he doesn't have to worry about it. The risk, obviously, if you run it a bit later, is that you could end up being compromised if such an incident occurs.
Beautiful to watch how close they are to the apexes and the walls through that second last chicane. The correction there as he nailed it into the apex of the final chicane.
Yeah, it's going to be a nice lap time here for Pascal Wehrlein. It's an improvement. He goes up nearly a tenth of a second faster than his previous best, just to cement his place at the top of the order. Albie, what do you reckon about Pascal Wehrlein so far in this session? Has he got the pace to take it all the way here today?
Yeah, I think he's doing a good job. Ultimately, Porsche have decided to go for one warm-up lap, whereas most of the grid has gone for 3 warm-up laps. But what that means, crucially, is for Pascal, he's got 3 bites at the cherry. He can do 3 push laps in this session, so he's given himself a little bit of a better chance there.
Yeah, thanks, Al. We really appreciate that. Ex-McLaren Chief Engineer Albie Lau joining us as part of our coverage in Season 12 of Formula E, and great to have him on board for that insight on the other side of the pit wall. Wehrlein, as we said, currently quickest now. Gunther, though, has just popped it up 0.02 of a second away. Yeah,
I think Wehrlein's going to get another lap here, isn't he? Because he's got enough time to do a cool lap here and go for another push. So most people, I think, are good, as Albie was saying, do an extra build, but it means they get 1 less push lap. Wehrlein, by being slightly out of sync, has given himself a 3rd opportunity to do a quick lap. So he's already sitting at the top of the times, and he's going to, I think, get another chance to do it.
There's Izzy Hammond. She's racing for Team Senior Frogs as part of the Evo sessions on Sunday here in Jeddah, I beg your pardon. Looking forward to seeing how she's going to get on as part of 10 content creators that are going to be lining up on the grid, going head-to-head in a dual format. So I imagine she'll be getting some crucial data ahead of her debut.
Yeah, I had a chat with her this morning, actually, at the hotel by the pool. And for anyone who's never seen Izzy before, she is actually standing up. So she will be perfectly packaged to fit inside the Formula E car.
Yeah, 4 foot 11. She gives Zane Maloney a run for his money.
Indeed.
Maloney out in the session at the moment, 9th quickest. Felipe Drogo is currently the slowest of the lot. Just half a second separating these 10 drivers at this stage. So we have now seen these times coming in, and now we're in the final minute of the session. This is going to be a one and last flyer here for Pascal Wehrlein, and indeed the remaining drivers who are all sort of biding their time in the final sector, trying to eke out as much of an opportunity as they possibly can to cross the line with a few seconds remaining.
Yeah, I mean, Roland is one to watch, isn't he? He's down in 8th at the moment, and Acosta's down there in the dropout zone as well. I mean, Dragovic, you know, another driver in the Andretti struggling for pace, but as you said, Tom, they get 1 last lap to have a go here.
Well, is Roland going to get across the line in time? He's just, as I can see,
they're on the lap now, I think.
He started
he's just going through the first sector. Here we pick up Oliver Roland making his way through the fast sweeping left-hander in towards the bus stop chicane. This is where the lap can really be won or lost, and where we've seen drivers pushing the limits as he almost grazes the wall there on the outside. It's now or never time here for Oliver Roland. 8th fastest sits the reigning world champion, and he needs this lap time to get through into the duels in that Nissan.
Well, good opening sector.
Not so good in the second sector, though.
No, he's not even done a personal best.
Couple of tenths down, isn't he?
Yeah, middle sector's down. So as we see, Wehrlein across the line, and he does improve a little bit more. So Wehrlein stays at the top. Roland is the next in the queue, and he's gone through the chicane where he had the crash earlier today, Tom. Yeah, he's worked it out quite nicely there as Oliver Roland. Second sector, as you say, nothing is right home about. Big slide though, coming out of the final corner. That might cost him time and a possible position in the duels as he comes to take the checkered flag. It's not an improvement. Oliver Roland is out of qualifying here in Jeddah. Improvements coming the way of some other drivers. Da Costa biffs it up into second fastest. Evans cements a Jaguar position in the duels as well for now, but Barnard just betters it on his final flying lap to go 4th quickest and knock the most recent race winner in Formula E out of qualifying. And crucially as well, Dan Ticktum not making the cut by 6/100ths of a second. The fastest man from FP2 this morning will go no further than Group B here today.
Well, big drama here in Jeddah. The upshot is Pascal Wehrlein, Antonio Felix da Costa, and then the two DS Penske's of Maximilian Günther and Taylor Barnard are the 4 drivers that will go through. Evans misses out by 1,000th of a second, Tickton by 6/100ths. You can see there the remaining 5 drivers separated by less than 2/10 overall. Pascal Wehrlein then makes it through into the dual stages of qualifying, 14,000ths of a second quicker than Antonio Felix da Costa. Very tight margins here.
Yeah, but you've got to say he had ownership right from the very beginning. He's gone out there with a clear strategy to get on with it and opened his account on the 3rd lap on the track.
This is what cost Roland here, DC. So we're coming through to the final chicane, and we saw the car moving about a little bit, going out. Oh, he just clipped too much curb on the inside, didn't he?
Yeah, that definitely would have cost him a 10th or so. So, whether it would have taken him through or not, it remains to be seen. But academic now, frustration so far for Oliver.
Yeah, it drops a bit of time in the second sector. You can see probably just a bit of overdriving going through that final sector to try and gain back the time that he'd lost. But ultimately, you're fighting a losing battle. It's the inside curb there. You can see just clips that sort of sleeping policeman. This is through the penultimate. In fact, beg your pardon, this is through the bus stop chicane earlier on in the lap. So the lap time was good at that point, but the second sector and then subsequently the third sector is where it was lost for him.
Yeah, slipped away. So just coming back, Wehrlein had ownership right from the very beginning of that session.
Currently. Don't have a rear tyre, for God's sake. Rear right, just got nothing.
Well, glad we were able to get the beat machine on that one there. Dan Tickton unhappy with the rear of the car. Not the only driver that's been complaining about that. We heard from Jake Dennis at the end of Group A. He was also not particularly pleased with his rear end.
Yeah, but he was very specific. It was the rear right. So today is a good day to be a left-sided tyre on Ticktum's car. The right's going to get a piece of his mind.
Certainly is. Group B qualifying classification then. So Wehrlein, da Costa, Günther and Barnard go through into the duels. We miss Mitch Evans. We also miss the fastest man from FP2 this morning, Dan Ticktum, Joel Eriksson, reigning champ Oliver Rowland and Felipe Drugovich down there in 9th position, just in front of Zane Maloney. So big disappointment for quite a few names there, especially Felipe Drugovich. If you remember, he was in that fight for pole position back in Miami. And sadly, he ends up second slowest in Group B. So right towards the back of the field is where he'll be for the E-Prix later on this afternoon. The Andretti cars struggling clearly with the balance. This man here likewise also struggling as well. Oliver Rowland just 8th fastest for the Nissan team. Bit of work to do ahead of the E-Prix this afternoon. And I would highly imagine that the incident he had in FP2 probably didn't help matters in terms of preparation for quali.
Yeah, look, it just sets you back, not only a little bit your confidence, but in terms of you're going out there with a car that's been partially rebuilt. So the frustration continues, but if there's anyone who can bounce back from it in the race, then it's Oliver Rowland.
Certainly is. Well, there is Dan Ticktum, another driver who's disappointed at the end of Group B qualifying, not making the cut into the duels. That's along the way, though, in a few moments' time. Back to Nicky and the crew.
Good job.
Quarterfinal one, Jean-Eric Vergne versus Norman Nato, a battle of the Frenchmen then here in Jeddah. Let's see how this one is going to work out. Vergne and Nato have got 3 quarterfinal duel appearances between them this season, but neither has actually won a duel yet. That will be set to change in a few minutes' time. Nato's the only Formula E driver to have lost 2 quarterfinal duels though this season, and Vergne also set to make his 150th start in Formula E here today. He will lead these drivers out on to the circuit. Of course, we go from 300 up to 350 kilowatts of power here in the dual stages and into all-wheel drive as well, which means a bit of recalibration of the brain. Not only are you going faster on the circuit, you also arrive sooner at the corner, which actually means counterintuitively you have to brake earlier going into corners from a high speed.
Yep, but that's why they get paid the big buck, because they're able to work all that out. And ultimately, race drivers just love performance. So this is about upping that performance, more grip, more power. And yeah, the fact that you're arriving there that little bit quicker, they've practiced this. They've got their eye in. It's about feeling the track on this day in history, this moment in history, because that's what it's all about. You can be quickest in free practice. Doesn't give you a place on the grid. It's about being quickest now.
Absolutely. And look at what we saw in the dual stage qualifying. Drivers taking almost half the session, 5 minutes or so to build the heat to the tyres and the brakes. They don't have that luxury now in the dual stages. Just one out lap, one flying lap to make sure that everything is up to as good of a working window as they can get it to. Obviously, it's the same situation for everybody, but it could be, that's why you see drivers going out, they're absolutely flat out on this outlap.
Yeah, and that also explains for any of our newer audience why sometimes you'll see someone not qualify as well as they would have liked, but then suddenly come race day, they have a car that over the race distance is able to exploit the performance of the tyres, and on a single lap like this, they might struggle a little bit to get the balance and get that last little bit of time out of the lap.
Well, Vergne looking nice and neat and tidy through the first couple of corners, coming down in towards turn 4. Easy to snatch an inside front brake, but no such bother there for Vergne. Gets it all sorted okay. So what we've now done is we've slowed these 2 laps down. So we've got Vergne and Nato side by side with one another to give you a direct comparison of these drivers on board. And you can see that Nato, with the initial advantage in that first sector, once they come through the first sector, it was a 21.5 second time for Vergne, but a 21.2, so nearly 3/10 in the pocket of Norman Nato there.
Yeah, so as I was saying, then when it comes to just hot out of the box, then Nato obviously happier with the balance of his car, and it's looking like he's building this lap quite nicely. It may be that Vergne gets beaten in this particular one, but come race day, he's on the money.
Snap of oversteer through the exit of turn 9 there for Nato, pushed him right up against the wall on the outside, but he's clearly got that advantage. He's building on that advantage here through sector 2. He's quicker still.
Yeah, I mean, he's nearly 4/10 up, isn't he? So he's just got to have a neat and tidy run through the final sector, which, as I was just showing on the E-pad, was where his teammate Oliver Rowland was struggling. But Nato looking much cleaner.
Yeah, almost at this stage with 4/10 in the pocket, you would almost want the engineer to almost give him a heads up. Yeah. Normally the rule would be you don't talk to the driver on a qualifying lap, but he's got such an advantage.
Yeah, exactly that, and that carries on nearly 7/10 across the line. So great effort from Norman Nato. These two, of course, great friends, Tom, know each other very well. And on this occasion, it is Nato who ends up on top.
Yeah, lovely job there from Norman Nato. Nearly 7/10 of a second the advantage. That is an absolute fortnight there. You see Max Klemenko, part of the Team Senior Frogs, is the Evo sessions. He's pointing back towards the TV screen saying, I want to see what's happening out there on track. But yeah, he'll be out later on. He's part of the career ladder, if you've ever seen that on social media. And keen to see how he's going to get on in a Formula E car. This is Norman Nato, though. Some team radio.
Yes, Norman. Max energy on tires, 6/10 quicker, max energy on tires.
I feel like DC and I should do the career ladder. Let's see. Let's see.
Yeah, but my one would be going down. Yours is going up.
Oh, I don't know about that. It's been a while now.
Nico Müller versus Eduardo Mortara then in quarter-final 2. Drivers now on their one and only flying lap in this session. Müller, of course, snatched pole position in Miami a fortnight ago, his first ever in Formula E. The first time, actually, believe it or not, he's ever scored bonus points, because, of course, you get 3 points for pole here in Formula E. Late apex there through turn 4, but the car looking nice and hooked up, and he'll know that there's pace underneath him because his teammate was quick in the group stages a few minutes ago.
Yeah, Müller there, the front of the car really responded well into the apex of turn 4, but it looks super close with Edo Mortara. Mortara nice and smooth through the fast left-hander of turn 5. Now you got the braking, really tricky, turning and braking all at once into this chicane here.
Mortara's looking good in the first sector, and he's picked up time in the second sector there still. He was a little bit quicker, just by a fraction, less than a tenth of a second between Mortara and Müller in sector 1. Sector 2, he's built that up to over 2/10 of a second.
Mortara's driving beautifully, isn't he? He's carried a lot of confidence out of being quickest in the group stages. We're just going to get through these last 2 chicanes now. And in the slow speed corners, the rotation of the Mahindra does seem to be really, really strong, and it's helping him in this last sector.
Yeah, look, his spatial awareness is absolutely fantastic to see in terms of, look at how close he is to those walls. Absolute belief in his machine.
And belief is rewarded with a spot in the semi-finals. Mortara gets the better of Nico Müller, nearly 4/10 of a second. The Mahindra driver out-qualifies the most recent pole sitter in Formula E. Great lap time there for Eduardo Mortara, and good pace underneath him in that car as well.
Yeah, he's the sort of person that you want walking down the aisle of an aircraft carrying 2 bags. You know he's not going to bang into you. He's got such good spatial awareness. A lot of people have got no idea.
Yeah, but yes, mate, yes.
Yeah, he's like a fine wine, Eduardo Mortara. Recently just turned 39 years of age and just seems to get better as he gets older.
Really? God, he's age-defying as well. He's much younger than that.
Yeah, fountain of youth or something, got a picture in his loft or whatever. Quarter-final 3, Maximilian Günther versus Antonio Felix da Costa. DS Penske versus Stellantis. One thing I was looking at just actually prior to the duels getting underway is just how much variety we've got in terms of powertrains here in the dual stages of qualifying at this stage. There's no real outline. You've got a couple of Porsches, a couple of Stellantises, there's a Jaguar in there as well as a Mahindra, so there's no real particular sort of outlier that you can look at and say, yeah, that particular powertrain has got an advantage here.
Yeah, came off the curb a little bit untidy there, Günther, didn't he? Off the turn 2 curb, the rear of the car not quite as settled as he'd have liked. Da Costa, you can see the bottom right corner. Let's see as he comes off the curb. The car definitely more settled, but we can't really tell in terms of speed because I think Günther is ahead, so he probably carried a bit more speed, which is maybe why it was a bit more untidy.
Yeah, 21.3 in the first sector there for Günther, 21.5 for Antonio Felix da Costa. Believe it or not, it's actually Günther's first dual appearance of the season, despite 2 top 10 starts in Mexico and Miami, courtesy of some grid penalties there. But of course, don't forget, he got pole here at this circuit 12 months ago, so it's a track that he goes well at, and he's building out that advantage here in the second sector as well.
Yeah, the body language of the car is just oozing confidence, isn't it, as he was clipping his way through the curbs.
Yeah, last year's winner as well, not just pole, so a track that he knows and loves. Into the final chicane. Nice angle on the way in there, gets the curb nicely, get it rotated, 4-wheel drive will launch him up to the line, won't have the traction problems that we saw earlier, and he's done a 15.4. Here comes da Costa, and he is only about a 10th down now in the final chicane.
Yeah, a bit of instability coming into that final chicane there. You can see they just had to take a bit of a bite at the cherry just to get the car rotated. That might have cost him time. It has cost him time. 2/10 of a second, the deficit between himself and Maximilian Günther. The upshot is it's one of the DS Penske's now through and into the semi-finals. But will he be head-to-head with his teammate Taylor Barnard, or will it be the former world champion Pascal Wehrlein?
I think the Penske's have got a good car here, haven't they? Because you obviously got both cars in the duels. I think they're the only team that have got both cars.
Yes, buddy. Good job.
So it's completely not true because Porsche got one as well, and Wehrlein's coming up. So, Penske and Porsche are 2 teams in the duels.
Yeah, let's see how this one is going to work out then. Will we see the 2 DS Penske's going head-to-head with one another? will we see a Porsche in there as well. So Taylor Barnard versus Pascal Wehrlein going up against each other for quarter-final 4. Barnard has got the highest career dual percentage win among the drivers with multiple dual appearances, 68% ahead of Oliver Rowland's 63%. It's actually his third consecutive dual appearance this season as well.
It's an important one for Wehrlein though, because if he ends up on pole, Tom, that's 3 points, isn't it?
Yep.
Which he could take the lead of the World Championship with.
Well, he did technically have a pole position in Sao Paulo, if you remember, but then got that 3-place grid penalty for the pit lane infraction.
But what I mean is, at the moment, he's 2 points behind Cassidy.
Yep.
So if he gets pole at the end of the session, he could end up as the lead of the championship before the race starts.
Absolutely, yeah, no doubt about it.
It does feel that he's well placed based on pre-practice and just generally how he's been performing. So this might be a tough one for Barnard.
Yeah, Wehrlein with the advantage in the first sector, 10th of a second to the better of the Brit. And what about sector 2? This is where the lap seems to be won or lost for so many drivers, where some have been just dropping a bit of sector time. 23.3 in sector 2 there for Taylor Barnard, so that's not bad. But is Wehrlein going to be able to get more of an advantage in his pocket? He is, 10th and a half now, near enough for Pascal Wehrlein over Taylor Barnard, with just a couple of chicanes now remaining for the Briton.
It's tight, isn't it? Great display by both drivers.
Out of the final corner then for Barnard, aims it for the timing line then here in Jeddah. What's the score on the door going to be for him? It's a 1:15.5, not the quickest time that we've seen so far in qualifying. So Wehrlein, though he might have dropped a bit of time in that third sector, if he can just keep it together, will go through and into the semi-finals. Is it enough though? Wehrlein or Barnard? It's Pascal Wehrlein who out-qualifies Taylor Barnard by just under a 10th and a half of a second. The Season 10 World Champion will go up against his compatriot Maximilian Günther in the second of the semi-finals in a few moments. That's a nice tidy lap time there for Pascal Wehrlein. That also actually means that we've got 4 different powertrains in the semi-finals. You've got the Mahindra of Eduardo Mortara, the Nissan of Norman Nato, the DS Penske of Maximilian Günther with the Stellantis powertrain, and of course the Porsche now with Pascal Wehrlein. Car looked really nice and compliant, didn't it, through that chicane in particular?
Yeah, driver's confident, car reacting to his inputs, and I should say bouncing nicely off those curves and helping with the rotation.
Absolutely. Well, Wehrlein then making his way back into the pit lane. A few minutes, he'll be going out for the second of the semi-finals.
That was the second quickest lap overall. Nato did the 15.33, you did the 3.6. Happy to side the tires?
Yeah, put the front on the rear.
Yeah, saying about having to side the tyres, I was just about to explain that basically means just swapping the tyres around front to rear to make sure that they've got as optimum grip as they possibly can, basically.
Yeah, no hesitation from the driver in that instruction.
Yeah, needs to know what he wants, and he does indeed know what he wants. So let's have a look at the Jules ladder then. So quarterfinals, Vernon, Nato, Muller, Mortara, Günther and Da Costa, Barnard and Wehrlein. The upshot is in semi-final 1 it'll be Eduardo Mortara versus Norman Nato, then Maximilian Günther alongside Pascal Wehrlein. How's that going to play out then with 4 different powertrains in those positions?
I think we're going to see Wehrlein and Mortara in the shootout for the pole.
Okay. What about you, Karun? Any particular outlier for you?
I think Mortara's looking really impressive. I think the Mahindra's got very good rotation, I feel, in the chicanes, and we've got 4 of them here. And arguably, you say turn 1 and 2 as well is quite a chicane in a traditional sense, but you know, these change of direction, and I feel Mortara's got a very strong front end for those corners.
Beautiful eyes as well, look at that.
He is a good looking guy, and he's a lovely guy as well. I mean, he's basically a 10 on 10. If he was on a dating app, he would be a 10 on 10.
Traditional methods of meeting people are available, of course.
Well, the last time we saw a Mahindra on pole was actually Berlin 2024, so it's been a little while, 18 months or so. And that was also Eduardo Mortara, which was, I remember that lap, it was a phenomenal lap he did. I remember him lighting up the tyres as he came out of the pit lane just to try and get them in the right operating window. You can see though that according to Gemini, Nato has a slightly higher chance to win this duel just because he had a better FP2 time and a stronger overall duel win rate in his back pocket as well. Doesn't necessarily mean in practice that that's going to be exactly the same as that though, does it?
No, but it's great insight, so thank you to Google for that.
Yeah, we have purple sector 2. Still very strong sector 1. It's just the sector 3 we're losing to Nato.
Yeah, Nato going on in a few moments' time. Do you know, Mortara has actually not reached the dual semi-final at all last season. As a matter of fact, season 11 was not a happy hunting ground for the Swiss driver. There's Günther, well, I don't think he's getting 40 winks in there, is he? He's
a bit of visualization going on, seeing his lap, seeing the success at the end of it.
See, that's the difference between myself and him. I'm imagining the buffet, but I'm closing my eyes instead.
You can see he leaning his head slightly as he's visualizing the corners.
Yeah, Max Günther, he'll be out in the second of the semi-finals in a couple of moments' time here in Jeddah. Welcome back to Jeddah, just a few moments away from the semi-finals getting underway. We'll see Norman Nato and Eduardo Mortara out first of all. One driver, though, who did not manage to get out of the quarterfinals was up against Norman Nato, and it was Jean-Eric Vergne, and we caught up with him after the dual stages of qualifying where he was eliminated. Slightly dejected sounding Jean-Eric Vergne. They're not a surprise at all being eliminated from the quarterfinals. The Citroen's just not having the pace here this afternoon, with of course Nick Cassidy also being eliminated from the group stages of qualifying. But semi-finals along the way then. So semi-final one, Eduardo Mortara versus Norman Nato, Mahindra versus Nissan. Mortara has looked very quick so far this weekend. His time in the quarterfinals was a 1:15.5. Compare that to Norman Nato's 1:15.3. So you would imagine that the momentum will be with Norman Nato. However, that's in practice. In principle, it's I'm sure going to be a little bit different. Drivers then lined up at the end of pit lane. Eduardo Mortara will be the first of them out onto the circuit. Of course, one flying lap here in this session, so they get one chance to get heat into the tyres and the brakes. And Edo exits on to the circuit for the second time here in the semi-finals. And let's see what he is going to be able to do. Now, of course, we've seen that he's got one representative time in the session. Of course, he's now through into the semi-finals here, Karun. But he's got to go and do that all over again. It's I imagine, a bit easier said than done.
You've got to reset, haven't you? You've got to reset, but you've also got to take the learnings of what you've just done, because, you know, if you look at the lap time, so Mortara did, what, a 15.5, and Nato did a 15.3. So for Nato, you know, you don't need to go mad here. You don't need to find huge leaps of time, and sometimes, because the tyres are, you know, they've done a bit more running, sometimes you don't actually find more time. If anything, you go a bit slower in the semis and the finals. So you just gotta understand what you got underneath you in terms of the condition of the tyres now, and then just slightly tweak what you've done just before in the quarterfinals.
There's some drivers siding their tyres as well, changing the fronts to the rear just to try and make sure they've got as good an opportunity as possible to extract the lap time here, as we see Eduardo Mortara out of the final corner and across the timing line to begin his one and only flying lap in semi-finals.
All of these are tiny variables, and that's what it comes down to. You're dealing with such small margins as the driver has to launch the car into the first of these chicanes very open, so a little bit more straightforward in many ways. But if you just find yourself going over the front tyre in some of these longer corners, then you'll lose half a tenth, and then that can compound around the lap. So they're in the moment. You know, what they've done before is actually got no bearing on what they're doing right now, other than their confidence level.
Got to say, the car looks lovely and hooked up here for Eduardo Mortara through this first sector. 21.2 being the proof in the pudding there. So that's a very handy first sector time. We'll see what the response is for Norman Nato.
Beautiful to watch them through that chicane there. Just missing. They're not riding the curb as much as I recall last year.
Just 18 thousandths of a second in the first sector between Norman Nato and Eduardo Mortara, to the benefit of Mortara, who's right up against the wall on the exit of turn 13 into the chicane, where the lap time can be so easily won or lost. Very easy to outbrake yourself there, but Mortara getting the car rotated. You wonder whether Nato is going to be slightly on the back foot. He's dropped a bit of time in sector 2 here, hasn't he?
Yeah, again, the rotation through the chicanes there, the Mahindra coming to the 4, and Mortara up to the line, a 15.2, so he's made a big improvement on his quarterfinal time.
Quickest time we've seen so far in the dual stages of qualifying then here. Don't know if Nato is going to be able to do anything to respond. He was catching briefly in that third sector, but a 10th and a half is a tall order to overpower Mortara, given the fact that the end of that lap was really tidy from the Swiss driver. Nato comes to the timing line. Is it enough? No, it is not. He's out of qualifying in semi-final 1. Eduardo Mortara will go through into the front row fight here in Jeddah, but which of the drivers will he be up against? Is it going to be Maximilian Günther, or is it going to be Pascal Wehrlein? We'll wait to see in a couple of moments' time, but Eduardo Mortara really doing the business in Saudi Arabia here.
Just confidence to go and attack the lap, and even though this track is a living thing and it evolves.
I think that was a good one.
Eder Mortara then, happy with that lap time, no surprise at all. We've got semi-final 2 coming along the way in a couple of moments' time. Let's go down and catch up with former chief strategist for McLaren in Formula E, Albi Lau. Albi, how do you see this one playing out as we've got semi-final 2 coming along the way with Max Günther and Pascal Wehrlein?
So you can see actually in the last run there, the drivers will have worked with their engineers between the quarterfinal and the semi-final. So you find the improvement there a little bit more than compared to semi-final to the final, for example. So just little tweaks on the all-wheel drive systems, a little bit of calibration changes there. That actually makes a big difference, as you saw in Edo's lap. So let's see what changes Maxi and Pascal have done with their engineers for this run.
Yeah, remains to be seen then here.
Yeah, Nato actually went slower, didn't he? He was a 10th and a half slower in the semi-finals. That's what I was saying before. You don't always see the improvement from the drivers. Mortara did a great job there to make such a leap forward. So far, first sector of the lap here, super close between them, just 700 in Wehrlein's favour, Tom.
Yeah, nicely done there for Pascal Wehrlein. It's actually a repeat, believe it or not, of last year's Race 1 dual final. Günther, of course, beat Wehrlein on that occasion to take pole position and then would go on to win the race. What will happen some 12 months later, and which of these two drivers will go through to line up against Eduardo Mortara?
Super tight.
Rear end instability there for Wehrlein. Bit of oversteer on the way into turn 13. That's going to cost him a little bit, I think.
Yeah, we'll have a say when Günther comes through the final sector, but there's nothing to choose between them now.
So close it is, coming through to the final chicane, and Günther's built back that advantage that he lost in the first sector then. So Günther versus Wehrlein, it's so close to call between these two drivers as they aim for the timing line. Is it going to be the DS Penske or the Porsche? 14,000's in it. It's Maximilian Günther who does out-qualify Pascal Wehrlein and will go head-to-head with Eduardo Mortara in the fight for pole position here in Jeddah. I tell you what, Günther, when he just turns up for a weekend and you get him on form like this, everybody says the same thing. He's just unbeatable.
He's a bit mercurial, isn't he? Because the highs are so high, and then he has some weekends where he does seem to struggle a bit more. So, yeah, super impressive.
Yeah, I think Wehrlein will be frustrated by that small mistake, but long line of racing driver excuses.
Certainly is, yeah. It's a disappointment there for Pascal Wehrlein. The lap looked really good, and if you look at where he was going, the first sector, Wehrlein had an advantage of just under a tenth of a second, actually. It's quite a sizable margin in Formula E terms, but sector 2 was where he lost it, and then it was just compounded again by that third sector. So disappointment there for Pascal Wehrlein, but a second row starting position is certainly nothing to be ashamed of, especially given that we reckon inside the top 10 is where we're going to see that sort of lead group breaking away in the E-Prix this afternoon. Or this evening, as I beg your pardon, because it's already the afternoon.
Yeah.
Oh, that was tight, no? I saw it was equal.
It was very tight. You saw you were equal. You were busy there putting a Mega 350 and still checking your times. Good job.
Yeah, just 14 thousandths of a second in it between Maximilian Günther and Pascal Wehrlein. Phenomenal job from both of those German drivers, but the DS Penske makes it through and into the finals then. Penske seeking pole in Saudi actually for the third straight year. Of course, they took pole in Diriyah in 2024 with Verne, last year here with Max Günther in the opening race of the weekend. Can they do it again for 3 years in a row? Let's remind us how we got, though, to our two drivers in the finals. We had Verne and Nato in quarterfinal 1, Muller and Mortara in quarterfinal 2, Gunther and Da Costa in quarter-final 3, then Barnard and Verline in quarter-final 4, semi-final 1 and 2, Mortara versus Nato, then it was Gunther and Verline head-to-head against one another. The upshot is that the final round 4 here in Jeddah will be comprised of Maximilian Gunther and Eduardo Mortara, who will be taking the 3 points for pole.
I think that was a good one.
Okay. He's within a tenth at the moment, mate. It's within a tenth.
God.
Warm-up mode. You do your bit.
Yes, I do my bit. Keep me in form. Through or not? Through or not?
Yes, two and out, just over 2 tenths. Good job, mate. Good job.
Good job, good job, good job.
Right, don't mess around with Gunther. You just bring it in.
Thanks, Nicky. The finals then. Maximilian Gunther in the DS Penske versus Eduardo Mortara in the Mahindra. Last time we saw Mortara on pole was Berlin in 2024. The last time we saw Gunther on pole was Shanghai in 2025. 1 lap, 3 kilometres. It will all come down to this. And of course, 3 crucial points in the championship as well. Mortara has had a great start to the season with a podium finish in Mexico City. However, on the other side of it, it's not been so brilliant for Maximilian Gunther. Just 6 points on the board so far in season 12. And he'll be looking to try and add to that tally with those points here today. 8 championship points, I do beg your pardon, for Maximilian Gunther. You can see there the duels very much in the favour of Eduardo Mortara as we head out on to the circuit for the final time here ahead of round 4. So Günther, the first driver, out on to the track, followed by Eduardo Mortara. And in terms of the lap times in the semi-finals, Eduardo Mortara a 1:15.242, Günther a 1:15.417. So if we can bring anything into that there, DC, one would say the momentum is with Eduardo Mortara.
Yeah, and he's been looking very much like just at one with the car, whatever the session today in the slightly warmer conditions of earlier. It feels like it's his to lose, but this is going to be super tight. Yeah,
it certainly is. You can see Günther there getting some heat into the tyres and the brakes on this one and only warming up lap as he makes his way down into turn 13. And will it be a Stellantis pole or will it be a Mahindra pole as we come through to start this flying lap then here for Maximilian Günther through this penultimate chicane. This is where we saw Oliver Rowland clipping the barrier in free practice too. And you can see in the background there is Eduardo Mortara.
Yeah, Mortara will have seen through that gap in the barrier ahead. So psychologically, he's got that little reference as to where his competitor is on track.
Yeah, the little carrot dangled in front of him then. So it all comes down to this as we come across the timing line. Max Günther versus Eduardo Mortara down in towards the first corner there for Günther. Car looked nice and neat and hooked up through turns 1 and 2. We've slowed the laps down here, so we've got them side by side with you. Günther on the left, Mortara on the right. Early 21 seconds or so is what we're expecting the first sector time to be. That'll give us our first idea of where these two drivers are at over the course of this final flying lap in qualifying.
Yeah, it also feels that Mortara was pushing a little bit more on the out lap as well. There's not as much of a gap between two cars on track as we might have seen in other shootouts.
And he's up in the first sector as Eduardo Mortara, nearly a tenth of a second better than Maximilian Günther. 21.2 for Mortara, 21.3 for Max Günther.
Yeah, he's done a really, really strong run through this the sequence of the lap there. Super close to the wall on the way out of 11 and nearly 2/10 up now in the first, over 2/10 Tom, as he gets into turn 13.
Yeah, he's leaving nothing on the table here is Eduardo Mortara. This is where we saw the lap time going away for Pascal Wehrlein in the semi-finals. He's clipped the wall on the exit of 13. Is that going to cost him? Is it going to be the moment where the lap goes away for Eduardo Mortara? At the moment, he's still got over 0.2 of a second in his pocket, and there's now one more chicane left, but that gap is coming down between Günther and Mortara as they come out of the final corner and aiming for the timing line. Is it Günther or Mortara on pole position here in Jeddah? And they take the checkered flag. It's Eduardo Mortara by 1/10 of a second. It's pole position for Mahindra here in Jeddah. Their first since Berlin 2024. A great lap time there for the Swiss driver, and continuing the form that we've seen from him throughout the entirety of race day here for round 4.
Yeah, what a brilliant shootout. Two great performances from those drivers and super close in the end. But you just felt that Mortara, he wanted it badly and he risked all to get it.
Yeah, great job from Eduardo Mortara. Fred Bertrand going around and congratulating the team.
It made a big difference because they had
3 points there for Eduardo Mortara, both his and Mahindra's first pole, as we said, since Berlin in 2024.
It's okay. Yeah, no problem. Okay, we take it.
And a bit of disappointment there for Phil Charles on the left-hand side of your picture, deputy team principal for DS Penske.
Not the perfect lap. All good or not?
Yes, by a tenth, mate.
Oh God.
what a job, mate, what a job. Brilliant.
No, I bent the car.
Yeah, it wasn't a perfect lap by any stretch of the imagination. Clipped the wall on the exit of 13.
Yeah, he said he bent the car, didn't he? So I wonder if that's the contact on the exit of 13. I wonder if he's just slightly bent the track rod. Maybe we'll get a replay of that.
It was against concrete rather than Armco, which but Armco has a bit of give to it, so when you touch it, concrete doesn't.
No, certainly not. Hopefully we'll get a replay of that moment there for Eduardo Mortara, but he was leaving nothing on the table, and I just wondered if that was going to be the moment where the lap fell away from him. Such were the margins that we've seen here in Formula E, 1/10 of a second separating those two. But you see Günther had a big old slide there going through that left-hander of turn 6.
Yeah, maybe, that account of some of the loss in the sector.
Oh God, the stress. Started losing grip, god damn it, at the end of the lap.
Well, there's a possibility of a record that Eduardo Mortara could break this afternoon. If he's 39 years old, he could become the oldest ever race winner in Formula E history. Let's have a look at this moment, though, through turn 13.
Little correction on the way in, maybe a little bit wider than he would have liked, and then that kiss with the concrete wall.
Gathered it all up okay, but he said he bent the car on team radio. Thankfully, his first and second sector were just good enough for him to keep enough of the advantage to hold on to pole position. If that first sector had been a tenth of a second slower, that could have been the difference between him starting on the front row and starting on pole and getting those 3 points.
Okay.
Great effort.
Yeah, exactly what Eduardo Mortara wanted and needed to do, and great for the Mahindra team as well. Of course, they've reaffirmed their commitment to Formula E with Gen 4 as well. They've been pretty involved with testing, as have all the other manufacturers over the last few weeks in particular. And there we see Eduardo Mortara in the weighbridge, just having a look down at the front of the car just to assess the damage following that contact he had with the wall on the outside of turn 13. But 3 points in the championship there for Eduardo Mortara will do him no harm at all.
Really good quality. Thank you very much, everyone. A shame. Lost the tires early on in the lap. Copy. Yeah, you could see that. Yeah.
Eduardo Mortara takes pole position for the Mahindra team here in Jeddah. His first pole since Berlin 2024 and the fourth of his Formula E career. 3 points in the championship. Max Günther just misses out at the venue where he got pole and won here 12 months ago. But the DS Penske looking pretty handy for a strong result here this afternoon as we head, of course, into our first double header of season 12, but also into the first pit boost race of the year. And Günther, I imagine there'll be a little bit of disappointment behind the helmets of the German driver, but nonetheless, I think he can hold his head high after a very strong performance, and he's in a good position going down towards turn 1.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, especially with this type of racing. If you get yourself anywhere in the clean air at the front of the grid, whether it's pole or not, you're in a fighting chance. You're out of the melee of the madness of the middle of the grid.
Congratulations.
A lot of chicanes where incidents can happen, so I think it's been a very strong qualifying nonetheless.
Yeah, as we said, a chance for Edo to break the record of being the oldest winner in Formula E as well. On the other side of the garage, Nick de Vries already down there and doing his homework after a disappointing qualifying. He sadly did not progress forward from the groups into the duels, and the upshot is he'll be quite a way down the order and probably in that mid-pack madness that we're expecting to unfold for the 31 lap E-Prix here this afternoon. But now for Max Günther to debrief. Let's go down though and catch up with Eduardo Mortara, his fourth career pole position, his first since Berlin 2024.
The man on pole position for round 4 of the season is Eduardo Mortara. You clipped the wall in your final lap and still put it on pole by a tenth. What an incredible effort.
Yeah, so I pushed everything I had, probably slightly too much in the third sector, especially where I had some small mistakes. Luckily for us, like, it was enough. And I was just giving my best, my very best today, and glad actually we scored the first pole position for Mahindra.
Yeah, it's the first pole position for Mahindra since Berlin in 2024. Talk to me about the journey that the team has been on to now bring you back to securing poles again.
Yeah, so I joined the team at the beginning of season 10, and we knew all together that we had quite a bit of work to do in front of us to develop our car, our operations. The team did a fantastic job over these last 3 years to do that. Obviously, it's only a quali, and it went very well for us. We know that we still have a big task in front of us for the race later on. Nevertheless, we are proving, race by race, that we are there, we are competitive, and it's great.
Several excellent laps in that quali session. You just looked incredibly dialed in with the car. Are you feeling positive for the race?
Yeah, I think I was feeling confident in quali today. Not so much in free practice, but thanks to the work of the engineers, we made the right changes in terms of settings, and I was feeling very good inside the car right from the beginning of the groups.
Well, Eduardo Mortara, huge congratulations. I'd now like to invite Giulio Pallet, the Vice President of Sustainability for Formula E, to present the Julius Baer Pole Position Award.
Eduardo Mortara, pole position number 4 in 2026 for the Swiss driver. The 4th of his career, the 1st of season 12. And 3 points on the board for him in the championship as well. Perfect for Eduardo Mortara. As he said, left nothing on the table. Full commitment from the Swiss driver. And let's see whether he can translate that into a possible podium, maybe even a victory here under the floodlights tonight in Jeddah. Keen to see what Maximilian Günther has to say as well for second position. I'm sure he'll be, as I said, a little bit disappointed as a result of that, but nonetheless, a front row start for the DS Penske driver is a clear view down towards turn 1, but for one car. Let's go down and catch up then with Max Günther, the German driver for DS Penske, who starts on the front row of the grid.
And the man starting in second place for today's race is Maximilian Günther. Max, it's incredibly fine margins out there in this qualifying session. What was just missing? What escaped you for that pole position?
Well, I guess tire temperature maybe a little too high was, I mean, look, all in all, I'm super happy. I mean, front row is always great, and yeah, well done to the whole team. I think all weekend we've put a really good package together. Wasn't quite enough. Edo did a mega job in the duels today. Yeah, on my side, I think just a bit of rear grip mainly missing with the tires getting hot, but you know, that's fine margins in Formula E, so I'm happy to have the front row.
We saw you have plenty of success here in Jeddah last year. Confident you can repeat that this year?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of fast guys around me. Edo, one of them, but as well behind us, there is a really strong group of guys. So yeah, obviously good memories from last year, but everybody, you know, starts the race from zero. You need to do a really clean and good job. Today, a lot of things can happen. You know, with one attack mode only, which is going to be very much deciding for the race when you take it. I'm just going to try my very best together with the team doing a clean, strong race, and then we see where we can up tonight.
It's worth mentioning both you and Taylor into the duels. The car seems pretty dialed in around this track.
Yeah, I mean, already yesterday in FP1, I think we had a good starting baseline. A few little issues this morning, but yeah, qualifying, I think we put it all nicely together. Maybe a few tweaks here and there for later on and for tomorrow. So yeah, I look forward to the race.
Maximilian Günther, the man starting in second place. Good luck this afternoon.
Thank you.
Maximilian Günther, front row of the grid in the DS Penske machine then, with Eduardo Mortara alongside him on that front row here for round 4. Of course, Pit Boost returns for the E-Prix tonight, and it's a 31 lapper from lights out to the checkered flag. You can see the starting grid with the two Lola Yamaha app machines right at the very back of it. We'll run you through it as it goes on, but very excited to see what will happen when the lights go out and we light up the night here in Jeddah for round 4 of the 2026 ABB FIA Formula E World Championship. Back down to Nicky and the team on the ground.
to execute everything in the right way. I did complicate myself a little bit. Did complicate my life a little bit, like in the last lap where I touched the wall in turn 13. But thankfully it was still enough to do the pole.
Congratulations again. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Can I grab a quick one for our socials?
Sure.
Yeah, the car was just very different to practice. I was actually really happy with my car in practice, and some things were just changed without being discussed in a way. So it was a bit surprising, but that's life. And yeah, I mean, there's a pit boost race in front of us. There's some things that will happen on strategy, so let's see.
Yeah, first of all, quite happy to make it into the duels. We struggled a lot in practice. Some issues there that we still don't really understand. The car felt much better in quali, so that was a good surprise. But still, you know, when you are kind of lacking the rhythm, the flow from practice, life is pretty tough. So kind of happy, but obviously would have loved to make it a bit further up on the grid when making it to the duels. But so far so good. The package is strong, so yeah, let's go and race from there.
To be honest, the duels actually wasn't that bad. I've been struggling ever since the first lap with my car behaving very different left and right. So considering how bad my problem has been, I think I'll take the result. Obviously Max has been a bit quicker than me this week, and I'm just struggling a bit with the car left and right, to be honest. So if we can get that fixed for tomorrow, then I think it's on.
It's been a difficult weekend, to be honest, just to kind of put everything together and, you know, extract that perfect lap out of the car. So I'm actually pretty happy with how tough it's been these last couple of days to put the car in P6. But, you know, once you're there, you kind of want a little bit more. And my laps were just all a bit rough here and there. So, yeah, to start 6th, it's okay. I think the race is now going to be a whole different thing. First pit boost race of the year. So I think we got a good race car. Should be fun. My strategy guys are on it, so yeah, it's gonna be cool.
Well, honestly, Edo did a really strong lap. So far, I think he's been the fastest. On my side, like my first lap was very strong. I think I was P1 out of everyone. On the second one, like a very tiny mistake, but to be honest, like as I say in the radio, no regret, because again, like he's been a bit slightly a tough FP1, FP2. Again, quite a good qualifying group. So it's again a good position to start the race. No regret because I didn't have the point 2 today, honestly. Like the lap Edo has done was quite strong. So yeah, I'm quite pleased where I am now, and we can do a good race from there.
Yeah, it was very close. Yeah, my last sector wasn't the greatest one, but yeah, until then it was pretty good. Just starting to lose a bit more the rears in the last sector with those temperatures, and there was enough to go a bit wide, I think in turn 13 it was, and probably miss a bit more than 200s.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, do you feel like you've got the race pace in the car?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, will be different conditions, will be quite a bit cooler, track temperature will be lower, but generally the whole weekend we've been strong. Obviously today we have the pit boost, so that is going to be exciting to find the right strategy, and then let's see.